Hello there. Today we are going to be painting an object. The object we are painting is this lovely mug right here. We're going to have a lot of fun painting this mug. But before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about the process of tracing and using graphite paper. So I have a nice, shiny, well-used piece of graphite paper right here. And let me show you a piece that is maybe not used as much. This is a very fresh piece of graphite paper, and you can see the difference here. Now, when you have a very fresh piece of graphite paper, what you know about this is it's going to make very dark lines when you trace onto it. And some people like the dark lines, some people don't like the dark lines. It's really a personal preference. But if you're going to trace your images onto paper, you should know that graphite paper, it's not a one-time use. You can use these over and over and over again. This has been used hundreds of times and it is going strong. They get better with use because the lines get less dark. And that can be a good thing for those of you that don't love the dark lines. Now, one way to help with the getting it less dark is just crumple up the paper and unwind it here. Straighten it back out. And this will just help a little bit with making the lines not as dark when they go on. But keep your graphite paper, use it over and over and over, and it just gets better and better with age. Today's project, we're going to be doing, like I said, this lovely mug. And we are going to be tracing that mug onto the paper. I've got my reference photo already taped to my paper, and I'm taking it graphite page side down and putting it under the paper. So shiny side, oh, I didn't do that correct. Shiny side down. So when we trace the image, the graphite gets transferred onto our watercolor paper. Now we are going to begin tracing. I like to trace with a red pen. And as you can see, there's this little bit, I cut out a lot of the background around the mug. And I had this little fork. We're just going to ignore that spoon or fork that's in the background. And a note on the paper that I'm using. Normally, I use Arches 140-pound cold press paper. And the reason why I do the cold press paper is because I like the graininess of that. And I like the way it holds the pigment. Now, hot press paper, it's very smooth. That's what I'm using today. It's Arches 140-pound hot press. Illustrators use this, so it makes it very easy to scan your work in because it won't pick up that graininess. Now, I prefer the graininess, but I wanted to experiment. I wanted to try something a little bit different today. And I want to encourage you to experiment to find what you like the best. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and begin tracing. And again, I am tracing with this red pen so that I can see where I've been. And I think it's important, one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure that I showed you the tracing today. So I want to show you how I'm getting these highlights. I am going to trace all of these little bright white reflections so that I can be sure to really paint those in as I work. And while we're tracing, I want you to think about what color you want to paint your mug. So the mug that we see in the reference photo, it's blue. And you can paint it blue, you can paint it green, really whatever color that you are in the mood for. And I'm just trying to capture some of these shadows in this handle, making sure to get this little spot right here. There's a nice highlight on the back of the saucer that the mug is sitting in. And when I took out the background, there's a nice shadow right here in front of this saucer. So we're going to be sure to put that shadow in even though it's not on your reference photo. So we're going to give this a nice, beautiful shadow in front of it when we paint. And another thing that I wanted to tell you about is I cut down my paper. When I printed this mug, I made sure that it would fit on an 8x8 square. I thought it would be great to have a nice 8x8 square. So I cut it down so it would fit perfectly in my square. So I cut the paper specifically. Now you don't have to do that. I've got a nice paper cutter that helps me create a nice, beautiful, strong edge. And it just makes it a lot easier when it comes to cutting paper. So you can leave the paper as it is, but I wanted a square. Sometimes it's just nice to change the size of the paper that you're working with. And again, I'm getting these highlights in. There's a nice reflection, white reflection on the saucer in here. Almost looks like a lightning bolt. And I'm going to make sure I pull that in. And over here, there's a nice reflection as well. And I'm pulling that reflection in. There's a little shadow underneath that I want to get on the mug. And there's some reflection in the mug that I want to get. So I'm going to move a little lighter here. But you can see there's a reflection of the coffee bean. A little white reflection right here where the color meets the white lip. Pulling this all in as I trace. So I find tracing very therapeutic. Just helps me really start to see the subject that we're going to be painting. And I'm looking for all of the little details right here. I'm beginning to really look strongly. I'm looking for color variations. And in the reference photo, when I print it in black and white, it really helps me see the different values that are in the photo without being distracted by the color. So this is a great way to see where things are lighter and darker. Now, I just did this little brown spot of the coffee, right? That little frothy brown. And I'm not going to make super strong lines here. So I'm not pressing too hard, but I know this little frothy brown, I'm just making these squiggly lines and some small bubbles. I want to make sure I capture a few of the bubbles in here. And just all of this different variation, because that's what's going to help give our coffee some interesting looks and help it look more natural if I capture some of these little dots. It's almost like a polka dot of froth. Okay, now I want to just come back over here and make sure I'm getting, it's very subtle, but you want to make sure you're picking up, there's a dark, the mug gets a little darker right here where it's picking up a reflection. It's lighter over here. There's almost a little line right here. Now, I missed these little reflections on the rim of the saucer on the left side, and I'm going to make sure I bring those in. And this highlight right here, I'm making sure to bring that in as well. I also see how I missed this highlight, this shadow, and I want to make sure I capture that so that I will remember to paint that in. There's also a little shadow over here. There's a bit of a shadow over here and here. Right here, I see a little bit of a shadow. And now, okay, the little coffee beans, I do want to bring these in. So I'm just going to trace. I've painted this cup before, and honestly, the coffee beans are some of my favorite part. And they've got their own little shadows. Okay, now I will not take the tape off until I've looked at this. So I'm just gonna flip it over. This is why we tape it, right? We don't want that to move around. And I wanna take a look. I have my coffee mug. It looks like I have all of my lines. It looks like I'm ready to go. So now I want to start painting. I'm gonna go ahead and take the tape off. And I am going to take a sip of my coffee here. I've got a tray over here, and I keep colors from my last project often on my tray. I don't always start with a clean tray, and I didn't really see a need to wash it off. And part of the reason I do that is because I can use these colors that I've mixed. So if you've watched the color wheel tutorial, I still have paint from the color wheel tutorial in my palette, but I do want to give myself a place to work. So I always start by looking at my reference photo, and just to help with the tutorial piece of things, I personally am going to be using the blue. I want to show you what it's like to paint a blue. I may not use this exact same color blue, but I want to give you an idea of how to do this. One of the great things about doing this particular mug is that this mug is a great way to learn different values within one color. We have a lot of different shades of almost the same blue. When I do this highlight over here and these highlights over here, I might need to bring in just a touch of a darker blue or a black into my color, but for the most part, the color is the same. And so it's different values on the same color. This is a great practice for that. I'm gonna go ahead and begin to mix the blue that I see here. So I am going to begin for mixing purposes by using my round 6. You can use, round 16. If you have a round 6, that is absolutely fine. And I'm gonna start with the cobalt, I believe. And I'm just going to really mix some color in here. Yeah. Now I'm gonna add a lot of water because we want to start with the lightest color that we see on the reference photo. So anywhere I see blue, I'm gonna start painting in this beautiful light cobalt. It's not quite the same color that we see in the reference photo, but it is the nice and blue. So again, I am using a paper that is slightly different than the paper that you're using. If you're using the cold press, I'm using the hot press today, and it's just a much smoother paper. And honestly, it's not been my favorite paper to work with in the past, but I wanted to give it another try. It's always good to experiment and to try new things. Play with what you're doing, get outside your comfort zone. I'm so comfortable working with very comfortable working with the hot press. And I thought it would just be a nice change of pace, get outside my comfort zone to paint here with this nice hot press. See, it's so smooth. It's such an interesting, and I'm avoiding, as you can see, these spots that I left white. So you can see like there's this and this right here, and I'm just leaving those spots white. Because they are where the light is hitting and causing such a nice bit of highlight there. This cobalt, when you add a lot of water to it, it really almost looks gray, a gray blue. And I want to darken it up a little. So I'm just adding another layer that I knew had more pigment in it and moving it around here. And hopefully as you are painting, you're just allowing yourself to, I like to just get lost in the act of being very present with what I see in the reference photo and my brush. And I don't know that you can hear them, but in my neighborhood right now, it sounds like somebody is sawing something. Okay, so I have just painted that first part of this, and I'm gonna come over here and just kind of, there's this little lip right here that I know I'm gonna be painting. I'll darken it up later, but for right now, I'm just putting down one layer of color. It is called glazing, to build up color in layers. We are glazing. My teacher, Sharon Larson, calls it color mapping. And Sharon is an amazing teacher. And I just love that term that she came up with. I think she coined that term, color mapping. And I like to give credit where credit is due. She taught me so much. And I'm just going to slowly bring in here I'm going to start in the side of the saucer to bring in color, being careful to just not hit any of those places where I want to leave it white. Just want to make sure that we are not painting over the places that need to stay white. We will absolutely have to come back in and darken this up in places, but again, we're just getting the first color down. and it's all the same color. All right, and now I'm going to come do this side. And I want to look at this lip and just kind of see, I need a little blue here. Actually, it's all blue. I was trying to. And there we go. Okay, so now we have that first layer down, as you can see. Now, I think that what we can do is let's start in here. Let's start to bring some color in to this area, the middle, the coffee piece of things. So I'm going to paint all of that a very, very, very light brown, very light. So let me take a look at what browns we have. I like the cinnamon if you're using the Artistro deck. So there's a cinnamon brown, yeah. Now I'm putting it on my tray first and then bringing water in. Now remember, I will probably say this in every single watercolor tutorial, but we can always go darker. You can't go lighter. So I brought a lot of water into this cinnamon. It will dry darker, it will dry lighter, but I want to be very careful in the beginning. I'm just nicely bringing this color in. You know, everyone says that when I tell people that I'm a watercolor artist, I often hear, "Oh, that's so hard." I don't think it's hard when you know what the steps are, and you all are learning the steps. So first you get your image down on the paper, and then you start building up the color. And you just can go as slow as you want or as fast as you want. But it's really just a process. And when you learn the process, it really makes it so much easier. Okay, now we have this nice color down. And really things need to dry in order for us to move on to the next steps. So this is going to take a little bit of time to dry. And it's not quite ready here. So let's see, what can I do? There is a little tiny gray here, and I can bring in that slight gray. So I'm going to grab my gray and I'm going to bring it onto the tray, and I'm going to bring a little black into that gray. I want it a little bit darker. I'm going to add a good amount of water, and I don't think it's going to bleed too much here. Yeah, so I'm just going to bring this gray in very lightly here. Very, very lightly. Leaving that nice white spot. Bringing this in here. Yeah. And actually it kind of comes all the way over super lightly, but it does come here. So I'm going to leave that just the way it is. Now I want to start making things a little darker. And let's see, I'm moving now to my round 6, and I'm going to bring more color in here. And as you can see, I'm mixing more of the cobalt in, and I know I can bring this over here, darkening it up right here in this area. And there is a little bit right here that's darker as well. I'm bringing that darker in. And now down below right here, this gets really dark, but I'm just going to keep slowly building up layers until I get to the layer I like the most. Just slowly bringing this in. Just listen. I like to listen to the sound of my brush on the paper sometimes. It's a really subtle little noise. All right, so as I'm slowly doing that, and I'm going to begin over here on this side. It's pretty wet over here, so I want to be careful that it doesn't bleed into the handle. I want to be very careful with my color values. And I think I can bring some of this over here on this side as well. It's very important to think about where the light source is coming from so that you know where shadows are or should be. So for instance, the light source is kind of coming from over this diagonal from the bottom or the left-hand side, and it's casting shadows on that right-hand side. So it's just important to note that. Now it's darker on the bottom over here. I'm certainly going to darken this up. We need to get a little bit more cobalt on. It needs a little bit more water. And yes, I'm bringing it in. When I look for reference photos, I'm looking for pictures where you can see where the light source is coming from. It's definitely shadow that makes a picture interesting. The more dramatic the shadows, often the more interesting the composition. When you can see a contrast between light and dark, that's what helps bring depth and dimension into what you're painting. Some of you have heard me say this before, but my primary work is I'm a life coach, and I really think it's that way for us too. Our shadows, or shadow sides, are often things that we hide from ourselves or others, but often those shadows, they're really what make us beautiful. They give us depth and dimension. Okay, so we have a little bit more depth and dimension to our mug. And now I want, or to the saucer. Now I want to start bringing some depth and dimension into my mug, but it's not really dry enough yet. So I'm going to move up to the froth piece of my coffee, and I want to mix this color. So I have like a red, yellow, brown right here, and it gets a little yellow orange on the right side where the light is hitting it. And it's more of a red, gray, brown, almost green over here on the left side. So I want to start over here. I'm going to bring in a little yellow. Get a little yellow on my brush. And let's see if I can bring in a touch of orange. See if I can lighten that up just a little. Just mixing. All right, now I think I have an all right color here. And I want to bring that into this area right here. And I'm going to just go ahead and bring it all the way around. Like this. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now I just want a little orange. While it's still wet, I'm going to bring the orange over here and just kind of let it bleed up. And I'm going to do that right down here as well. And the orange becomes a red, so I'm going to get a little red on my brush. I like that cherry red. And yeah, right here, I'm just going to let it bleed in. So it's kind of taking over the orange. I'm letting it do that. Letting it bleed in. I put it on while it's still wet. That's wet on wet, right? And I'm letting the color mix in. Now I want to come back to that cinnamon color, and I'm gonna get a little just down here, letting the cinnamon bleed in. This technique is I'm just letting the water control what's happening. And then I'm bringing a darker cinnamon around here on the left. Just bringing the cinnamon in. Okay. I can darken it up right here if I want to. And down here I can just add a little bit of brown. Great. Now I'm rinsing off my brush, and okay, I want to start darkening up the cup itself. It's still a little wet, but I'm going to roll with it. I think we'll be okay. So I'm getting more of that cobalt, right? We're just mixing in the cobalt, just a touch of the water. So I've got nice, rich, even cobalt here. And what I mean by even is that I've got the pigment even in the water and on my brush. And it's not a lot. I'm kind of dipping the brush on. I don't want a ton of excess water on my brush. I just want that color. And let's see. I think what I want to do here, there is this little spot like this that I see on the mug, and it just kind of comes over, just pulling it over, and then kind of down here I just picked up a little water and I'm bringing that over. And I just am looking at the different values that I see on on the mug, and I'm bringing that in. So kind of see that highlight right here. There's different things going on, almost like a little right here. And it's darker over here as well. And there is just a sharp, dark line right here. I don't think this is dry enough for me to bring that in, but it does get a little bit darker right here along the edge. And it is also kind of darker over here. And definitely darkens up right here and through here, leaving those little reflection spots if you can. And it comes down to like right here. Super lovely. And it's dark, just this little dark line underneath where the handle's rounding. You can see that, how it darkens up a bit. Now, it gets really dark over here. This is my first very dark spot that I'm putting in, and I'm gonna have to go back and darken up a lot of other places to kind of pull in that dark brilliance that I just captured. But yeah, that's just like that, and I kind of see that right here as well. It's too wet for me to bring a sharp line in, but I'm gonna have to come back and put that in this area. As you can see, this is starting to pop as I put in that darker blue. And I'm getting some more pigment on. I'm gonna add just a touch of water. That I didn't put my brush in the water. As you can see, I just brought it over here where there was a little bit of water. And there is just this sharp line right here. And it doesn't come all the way down, but it's here. And again, this is deep paying attention. Watercolor will absolutely teach you how to see things differently, to really look. And again, this is starting to pop. You can see how that's beginning to really come out. Now, I want to darken this up now too. Seeing what that did, I'm just really bringing a darker color in here. It's these darker shadows that give this depth. I want to make sure it has the depth that I see in the photo. Bringing that strongly in on my mug. And I'm picking up more of that dark blue. I see that dark blue just really starts along the bottom right here. Picking up more pigment, pulling in the line. And I'm going to keep picking up pigment, and I see how dark all the way over to the right this line is. Pulling it in. Yeah. Picking up a little bit more water. And you've got just that nice shadow then on the saucer pulled in. That's perfect. Lovely. Now I'm going to add a little water to this over here, and this is just a little darker over here, and I want to show that. Lovely. That's perfect. Okay, you've got that all in there. I'm going to bring that in. Even going to bring a little of it around. And a little bit over here. Beginning again to darken this up. Darkening this saucer up. So it's really, you're starting to see how this is really, the sides come up because they're darker. You can see that here. And again, there's a shadow over here that I want to bring in as well. I'm just going to bring that in nicely right here. Perfect. So lovely. And this little line, it's really nice. It's darker right here. I'm going to give that a sharp line in a little bit, but for now, that's good. Okay, and then here. So you can see our beautiful little mug here is just kind of taking shape. I just love to see what's happening. And I realize I really want to kind of darken this up just a little here. So I'm adding one more layer. It just doesn't feel dark enough. I'm gonna have to go over that shadow a little bit, but just, it needs to be darker. Don't be afraid to darken things up if you need to. And you know, I can't tell you yet if I am liking the hot press or not here. So I'm gonna wait, I think, to tell you what I think of this paper. You know, it's got its place. You need it for certain things, for sure. Adding this detail in here. Okay, now what do we want to do? Okay, let's come back up here. Rinsing off my brush. And I am going to just want to get a little bit more of that cinnamon. Yeah. And I'm bringing it onto my tray to move it around, and I'm just going to kind of move around the color here. And I'm letting my hand be kind of shaky. This does not need to be kind of precise. It's just frothy over here. Just kind of leaving the highlights that I left. Got some froth in here as well over on this side. I'm going to make some dots. And letting that be. Now it gets real dark over here, so I'm going to take that brown, that cinnamon brown, and I'm going to add a little bit of the onyx to it and get this muddy brown when I do that. And I'm going to go ahead and just pull that in right here. And I'm gonna add some dots. Yep, just like that. You can see how this is just starting to really come together. I just love watching it come together. I'm gonna take, I got some of the darker on, even a little black, a little more black, bring it in really thick, just really want to darken it up. And I'm just going to take and just do a little dark spot here. These little tiny bubbles, making them that's great. As you can see, that is really starting to take shape, and it's so much fun to watch that come take shape. Now I'm going to rinse off my brush once again. Now there is a line down here, a very dark line that I want to bring in. And that darker line, I'm going to go ahead and just get my brush wet and then bring it into the blue and just slowly bring it in right here. It's where the mug kind of hits. Yeah, just like that. Lovely. Okay, and then I want to, let's take a look here. Where else do I want to darken things up a little bit? Just coming back over on this side. And I'm going to rinse that brush off a bit. I'm going to get some blue in here. I'm going to be careful with this. I want a little bit more blue here. Again, I don't want it necessarily quite as dark as the big shadow, but I want it to have a little bit more roundness. Yeah, there we go. All right, that's looking good. I think that I need to fix this shadow over here and bring kind of more shadow in right here. Yep. There. Now I want just a crisper dark line over here. There is a light line back here. You can see a little touch of blue. I don't know if you caught that in the reference photo or not, but it's back there. And it almost comes all the way around. Just gonna bring it around, yeah. So just a tiny little bit of blue back there. And then I'm gonna come back to my onyx and get a little bit of the onyx on. And I see that right here is darker. Just bringing that in. Yep. Nice. And it kind of comes down here and it just comes around. You could even bring a little bit over here if you wanted to, just lightly. And okay, what else do we want to do? We have not yet tackled these guys. Now, I think I want to do cinnamon brown. Not cinnamon. I was doing cinnamon, but I'm going to do cinnamon brown. And I'm just going to keep it really dark. As you can see on my tray, I'm going to keep it very dark. And I'm going to just paint my cute little coffee beans. And I need them to dry to be able to put the detail in. Voila. Okay, those coffee beans are there. This is really starting to come together now. It's so much fun to watch it come together. Now, there is a slight reflection of one of the beans over here, so I'm going to just get a little bit. It's very slight. This is almost too dark. But you can kind of see there, I made it probably a little too dark, a little too obvious, but we're just gonna roll with it, you know. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm gonna bring a little bit more in here. Okay. Now, I want to darken up this shadow. It's darker than what I'm painted it as, and so I'm going to bring that shadow in. Right there. Maybe even a little bit more. This is just a little dark reflection here. Bring that in. Okay. I still don't feel like I've quite captured it dark enough right on this left side. I may even darken this up just a touch. Okay, let's see what else. Now I want to add in a little bit of a shadow right here, and I want to make that shadow purple. I have a nice Merlot color right here. Let's see. Yeah, I think we'll go with the Merlot. I'm just going to go ahead and bring the shadow in. Look how fun that is. Immediately we add so much depth here. It's a lovely color. Perfect. All right. Almost got it. Yeah, that's just lovely. Okay, so this is just shaping up to be a fantastic little saucer. I'm really pleased with this. Now, I want to give a little bit more detail to my coffee beans over here. So I'm going to get the blue. I want to put the shadow in next to the coffee beans right here. And they're not completely dry, so I'm going to jump the gun just a little bit, but I'm rinsing off my brush, and I'm going to get really dark brown here, putting that in there, and then I'm going to get some onyx, and the onyx is the black, and I'm going to mix it with the brown so it's a lot darker here, and I'm going to just add that nice So there are the coffee beans, and we just have this beautiful, beautiful mug that we did that is so much fun. And we learned, what did we learn here? You learned how to do different values of one color. We worked with shadows and just how beautiful the shadow can bring out a piece. And I am going to go ahead and just add a little bit of this Merlot. I want to really, I think, darken it up a bit here. It's just not quite as dark as I had hoped. And gives us a really rich color. Perfect. Et voila. All right. Thank you so much for painting with me today, and I can't wait to see you in the next lesson.